Fox News headquarters. If you're just joining us, we have some breaking news out of Boston today. What you're seeing on your screen is from our affiliate, WFXT. We've been listening in on their description of the scene in Boston. Just shortly before 3 p.m. East Coast time, there were 2 explosions reported in Boston at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. We do not know the source of these explosions. We are still learning about the extent of the injuries in this incident. According to one source, a local law enforcement officer telling one of our producers for the Justice Department that there are at least 3 people dead, and we're getting more reports of others injured. In fact, we have one report from the Massachusetts General Hospital reporting that there are 4 patients that they're seeing, but at this point, it's anyone's guess, and it's really a best guess right now about how many people have been injured or affected by these mysterious explosions. Let's go back to our affiliate, WFXT, and listen to the latest news.
You can just imagine, you go to this event, and this is Maria Stefanos' picture. She was right there at the finish line as well, cheering on her husband.
And what did she say about her experience there? I know you had a lengthy conversation with Maria.
We did. Maria, and you can see in her picture right there, you can see the smoke from that explosion. Maria said her husband had just finished. Maria's there with her family. A lot of people there with their families. You know, it's school vacation week here in Massachusetts, and this is a big event. People going out, cheering along the finish line. And Maria described minutes after her husband crossed the finish line, not 1, but 2 explosions, and then just a chaotic scene. And as a news person, she said she wanted to stay there and capture what was going on, but as a mom, she wanted to get her kids
down the street. It looks like it's about a block or so down the street from the first explosion. This is the finish line of the Boston Marathon. There have been a large number of casualties. We do not know about deaths, but many people have been injured, and apparently some of them gravely. This is the videotape of the first moments after the large explosion that we saw on the sidewalk there. This is a very short little clip of videotape that we have that shows the actual explosion. There it was, right there at the finish line. One of the runners, you see, went down immediately in the middle of the street at the moment of the explosion. But let's go back to the videotape that we saw just a moment ago that captures both explosions, because we see 2 explosions separated by about 15 seconds and separated by about a block, it looks like to me. That's the first explosion. Now, as the camera begins to pan to the left, look down the block. And there is the smoke from a second explosion down the block, maybe a block further down Boylston Street from the finish line. So, witnesses described 2 explosions, and we have now seen them both apparently separated by about 15 seconds and by about a block. We do not know what has caused these explosions. We have one of our reporters, Ken Tucci from WBZ, on the telephone. Ken, what can you tell us?
Well, Scott, I can tell you that we were set up to do our coverage of the Boston Marathon, so some of our people were there at the finish line. I was 100 yards or so away when we heard the first explosion, and of course a lot of us kind of went in that direction. And what we saw was damage and a lot of injuries in front of a store called Marathon Sports, ironically, which is directly across the street from the Boston Public Library, which is where the finish line is. So something either occurred outside or inside that store. We believe it was outside, but we're not quite sure. But there were a lot of people injured, many people being taken away on stretchers, a lot of laceration injuries, and probably worse, though I'm not a medical person on that one. The good news, if there is any, is that there is a very extensive medical tent set up just beyond the finish line here to take care of any injured runners who come across, and the people who work in that medical tent are trained, many of them, in emergency medicine, and they, of course, responded immediately. And there are plenty of police and other emergency personnel here anyway, so they got to the injured very, very quickly and pulled them out of there as quickly as they could, triaged them, got them onto stretchers, either into the medical tents or onto ambulances, which were also in the area. So they were able to get to the people quickly. The scene in front of that one first explosion was just the barricades that are set up to sort of have people behind them were all blown out, and then they were just, I'm afraid there were a lot of people on the ground. The second explosion, as you indicated earlier, was maybe 15 seconds or so later, further on up Boylston Street. We haven't seen that one. I haven't seen that one from a personal vantage point, but it happened very quickly after the first one, which I think has to make the authorities wonder and think the worst on that. Scott?
And once more, they have evacuated people from the immediate region. They're telling people to avoid manholes, garbage can. They are testing the air, George, as you said, to make sure there are no chemicals in the air that are going to add to any injuries. We have also heard reports of burns, severe burns. And we did see, when you see the explosion go up, if we can put that up once again, Mark Burstein, if we could put that up, because you can see that fireball. There you see it at the base of one of the explosions.
And this is the area, as we said, this is the area where family members, loved ones, friends all come to see their runners, 26,000 strong today, coming across that finish line, a place of great celebration. Whoever set this off was designed to hit at the moment where it could do the maximum amount of damage.
I want to check in again and see if Martha Raddatz is still online with us here. Martha has been on the phones as well and talking to everyone at Homeland Security Defense. Martha, are you there?
Diane, yes. One thing we are monitoring is the Boston Police and Fire and emergency scanners, and their bomb scares coming in all over the place. I think right now, probably up and down this route in this area, everything someone sees is suspicious. They've got lots of dogs out now looking for any suspicious devices. They've got their explosives teams, I'm told, scrambling to this area. And again, you see those National Guardsmen in the area ripping down some fences to try to get to some victims. You can see them going through this crowd in any way they can, and I'm sure you'll see more of them in the coming hours. Diane?
Yes, interesting, and I'll throw this to Martha as well as Pierre. As we're watching it, all these cars that are still parked along this route, I assume that each one of them has to be monitored, and each one of them is a source of suspicion at this point to police. They don't move them, but they're going car to car, we think, Martha, Pierre?
Yeah. Look at that area, Diane. You can just see the enormous amount of people, of vehicles, everything around that area. They want to go through everything they possibly can, but they're going to go to whatever is suspicious right away. Plus, you've got this system overwhelmed. You've got cell phones overwhelmed. You've got the emergency system overwhelmed. They're obviously tending to the victims first, but right now they really want to find out if there are any more devices around there.
And I want to bring in Karen just a second, Pierre. We'll get right back to you. But Karen Willardson was also there, a runner. She is running from Salt Lake, I believe, and she saw those explosions as well. Karen, can you hear me?
I can.
Tell me what you saw.
You know, I was about less than a tenth of a mile from the finish line, and the explosion went off right by the finish line. Just the boom, you felt it, it hurt your ears, and a big black plume of smoke came out from it. And I stopped thinking this can't be right, and kind of backed up and looked around, and the second bomb went off, or the second explosion went off, just behind me. It seemed to be, the first one seemed to be big enough to shoot out the glass of the storefront. The second one seemed to be closer to the road, like maybe in a mailbox or in a garbage can. And people started pulling victims away that were injured, trying to drag them away.
No, I didn't witness the wire getting knocked down, but again, it all happened so fast, and our initial reaction was, to turn around and get out of there.
Which is a good instinct. definitely a good instinct. We're just so taken aback by this and what we're seeing, and talking to you talking to you from Boston really drives it home to us here in Chicago what you went through this afternoon.
It's absolutely frightening, and I can't think of why somebody, I have no idea what's going on or what could have happened, but if it is anything with malicious intent, I can't imagine why at a marathon where everybody is so generally cheerful and supportive of one another, and it's usually such a friendly event, and it's heartbreaking to think that maybe there's some malice intent behind it that I can't even imagine what would be going on. So it's breaking my heart a little bit as a runner.
I think so many
and
people.
A member of the running community.
Yeah, and I'm a member of that community as well, and anyone, a member of the human community, watching what we're watching there. But runners, as we know, are a tight group that lean on each other and rely on each other and help each other through marathons and races of all kinds, and definitely through days like today, as difficult as they are. And this is a truly difficult day.
And you don't want to assume terrible things, but the blast and the way that it felt, it felt very offensive and very, not accidental or.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And when you have them timed so closely together, when you have them timed, 10 to 15 seconds apart, when you have two of them like that, it just, it drives from the mind any other possibility for a lot of us other than malicious intent, designed for maximum effect, designed to be at a happy event where people are gathered, in solidarity and enjoying their day.
And all of a sudden, all of the excitement and enjoyment on everybody's faces was turned to terror, and everybody was just trying to hold on to each other, to support each other to get them out of there, which is, another testament to the running community, that those of us who have run the marathon and were maybe too tired to keep going, were leaning on each other and trying to get us out of the area as fast as possible. So as much as we had people going in to, support the situation and figure out what was going on, there were plenty of people helping each other get out of there and trying to just act as quickly as possible.
And at least they had that. At least they had each other to rely on. We have you to rely on to bring us the information from Boston. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we appreciate it very much. We're going to turn to Matt, who's about a block away from the scene right now. Matt, are you on the phone with us?
I am.
Can you tell us what you're seeing and hearing as of right now?
I'm at my hotel. A lot of finishers just gathered around the lobby, watching the TVs, looking at the news reports, and trying to figure out what's really happening, what's going on.
Where were you when this initially was going on? Where were you when the blasts happened, Matt?
We were about a block behind the finish at Coffee Stop, just trying to help my friend relax his legs after he finished, and we heard the two explosions that shook our building, but people kind of looked around at each other, not really knowing what had happened, and we were so close to the finish that, people were talking electric transformers, things like that, and again, a lot of confusion, and once we had finished our coffee and walked out, people started realizing what had happened, and a lot of sirens, a lot of ambulances, and just people running, and just chaos. Just not really knowing what had happened and where to go and what to do.
And that first blast, the reaction much different, I suppose, than when there had been two. Then after the second, the chaos.
You see a runner go down after getting hit by a piece of shrapnel. You see the smoke plume rise no less than 50 yards from the finish line, and then a second explosion seconds later, just a short distance down the street, appears to be equidistant from the route of the race. Both explosions appear to have been located at or near the base of buildings at the finish line of the Boston Marathon this afternoon on Patriots Day, about an hour after the first highest-ranking elite finishers. And sadly, the injuries we are hearing about being triaged and taken to hospitals are consistent with what you would find in similar explosions in a war zone. We're choosing not to report any numbers early on because there's going to be great confusion with several metropolitan hospitals getting the wounded from this. If there's any good news to report at all, and it's a double-edged sword because they were likely among the wounded. You had public safety officials right there. The medical tent was within view of the first explosion. You had Boston PD, fire, EMS, all there on duty because of the secured finish line. These were initial aerials from our station, WHDH in Boston. Right there at the top of your screen, you see the white powder aftermath of an explosion. That was what's left of the reviewing stand. The black truck's part of Boston PD as they investigate. The feds were en route. And you see the aftermath from an explosion on that sidewalk. No other way to put it. Windows were blown out, flags were blown down. You saw the barricade came down, and runners who were just yards from, for several of them, accomplishing the greatest feat of their lifetime, one of the great athletic achievements there is, 26.2 miles in the famed Boston Marathon, one of the most famous public sporting events in this country, and instead knocked off their feet by one of two concussive explosions at the finish line. Way too early to draw any conclusions. This is just into us. Three separate law enforcement officials are looking very closely at the possibility that this is, to use military parlance again, an improvised explosive device, an IED. That this could have been a bag or satchel, that this somehow eluded race day security, whether it was pre-positioned or came in during the excitement of the finish and escaped the attention of sniffer dogs and electronics. Let's listen in once again to WHDH.
We don't really know because this all happened close to the medical tent, and as you know, they have those foil rafts. Another ambulance pulling in right now, anticipating yet another person here. The people here at Boston Medical Center don't have a firm count, an official count, because people are
671. Marathon Sports, familiar with it. Public libraries in that area as well. It is the finish line, but also a number of tents for triage and for treating runners as they come through for dehydration, for exhaustion, for cramps, for everything else. So there is an incredible amount of medical personnel who are injured at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. Today was the 117th running, as you mentioned earlier, field of 27,000, many of whom still hadn't gotten down to this stage.
That's right.
My daughter, in fact, sent me a picture of one of her teachers as a soccer coach who was out running today. She was there just finished a moment before the bomb went off and looked back at it. And so it's just incredible. But you have a lot of weekend warriors, people like myself who wouldn't run in the elite times.
That's right.
The elite runners were already through. This is a lot of people who you may know in your areas that you are neighbors and so forth that may have been out there today. So we, again, encourage people, if they know they are to be safe, obviously, and can send out something through social media, contact your family members as we recap what has taken place today in the city of Boston at the Boston Marathon finish line down on Boylston Street. Again, we can confirm now there were two bombs that went off. That is from the BAA. That has come across, as well as 2 dead and at least 22 injured. As you can imagine, it's a chaotic scene. There were ambulances coming, going, people being treated, probably, no doubt, in the tents down there as well, but then out on the street, on the sidewalk, where they needed immediate assistance.
That's right. I also just want to remind everyone that if you're watching this at home or if you're in a hotel or a business right there on Boylston Street and around the area, that police and authorities are asking you to please stay inside as they sweep the streets. They have bomb-sniffing dogs out there trying to look for more. 2 bombs have gone off, but they, clearly are checking to see if there's any other danger out there.
I want to show you this picture right here. This was what was sent to me by my daughter, whose teacher, again, was off today, obviously the school vacation week, and the teacher was out running the marathon. Her name is Kelly Dengas. She was a teacher in the Medfield school system, but was out running. She's a soccer coach as well, and you can see right here this photo taken And I'm not sure where Kelly is in this, but she did settle on the picture. But you can see the explosion up on the left corner of your screen there. Well, towards the middle more so. But that fireball, that orange, and then the cloud emanating out of the building as the windows, no doubt, were being shattered right there from the impact. Now, we don't know where exactly the bombs were. Were they in the building? Many people are suspecting that perhaps they were in a trash can outside along the side.
Explosion. You see one of the runners goes down immediately. That is apparently the area where the largest number of casualties has occurred. The Boston Police Department is now telling us officially that 2 people have been killed and 22 people wounded in these twin explosions at the Boston Marathon.
And Scott, you can imagine what the concussive force must have been for the gentleman to go down many feet from where the bomb went off, and then another person went off in the middle of the street. And of course, that's one of the ways that people get injured, whether they're hit by flying glass or shrapnel-like material, but just the concussion of it blows them away, and it can cause brain trauma.
Bob Orr is in our Washington newsroom. Bob, what are you hearing?
Scott, as you pointed out, the Boston Marathon folks are now labeling this twin bombs. The government will not go that far, but I have to tell you that they are proceeding down the belief that that's very likely what happened here. I mean, what's influencing their thinking here is the coordinated or the apparently coordinated nature of this. You have one explosion that takes place, and then a short time later, as you've been showing folks, and at fairly close distance, a second explosion. That seems to indicate some level of orchestration, some level of planning and coordination. Now, we want to be careful because there is no hard evidence at this point that these were deliberately planted, but if this were to be some kind of attack, domestic or foreign, among the things that those kinds of groups would look for would be a high casualty count, a crowded area. It would be an extra plus to do it near an area where there's lots of security, i.e. the finish line, and there would be more than one device. So those are the things, when you're starting from zero with very few facts, that you look at and say, we have to look hard to see if this was some kind of attack. On the other side of the ledger, of course, there could be another explanation, less nefarious for this, but as time goes on, I think they're more easily able to rule out things like natural gas breaks and that kind of thing. The federal government is just now getting to a posture where it's getting experts there into the scene. The FBI, agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, because, as you can imagine, they were caught like the rest of us.
After the initial wave of runners passed by, it is an even softer target. People are relaxed. People are milling around. They're waiting for their loved ones. So if indeed this is a terrorist attack, they've chosen the softest of soft targets. You get a whole lot of people together in one area. As we've seen, that blast was fairly concentrated. Both of those blasts, a fairly small fireball, but that can do so much damage when you have people in close quarters like they were.
And again, before we all, as we do, try to think of who could have done this, what might have been behind it, we're pointing out terrorism comes in all sizes, many shapes, and many different sources.
And we should add, as Pierre Thomas had told us earlier, that the Boston Police, Homeland Security had not gotten any specific threat that we know of that had come in before the race, and now, a little more than an hour and 20 minutes since the explosion, still no word of anyone taking responsibility, any organization taking responsibility for these explosions.
I want to point out the Boston Marathon Facebook page, and again, we want to make sure that we're trying to authenticate everything that we're reading online as well, but they say 2 bombs exploded near the finish line, so we have heard that word being used. There it is. You see the Facebook page there, and they do talk about 2 bombs exploded near the finish line.
And as you point out, Diane, there are several hospitals in the area. We've gotten the first report now from the Tufts Medical Center. We heard earlier from Massachusetts General, but there are currently 9 patients at the Tufts Medical Center from the explosion that occurred at around 2:50 p.m. near the finish line of that Boston Marathon.
Is Kendall Heath still with us? Because Kendall was first reporting in from the scene. Kendall, where are you now? What are you seeing now?
Well, right now, Diane, I'm back at my hotel actually waiting for my husband, who is still on the route, and I have not met up with yet, so I'm hoping to do that soon. But all around us near the hotel are people waiting in lobbies, outside, trying to figure out what's going on, how to meet up with their loved ones, and trying to get more information.
Of course, course, the consequences are being felt far and wide right now. Diane, you already said that Pennsylvania Avenue in front of the White House has been closed down. The FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, has issued a temporary flight restriction over the area of the explosion. That is effective immediately. And right now, British police say they are reviewing security plans for Sunday's London Marathon because of these explosions. The London Metropolitan Police have confirmed that to the AP. That is the next major international.
That was part of a whole planning that took place beforehand in case there was some sort of emergency. It was part of an emergency plan. We want to go on over to Mike Bodette right now, who has some new information about what's happening here. Mike?
Hey, Sarah and Mark. Yes, we're just getting word. There was a press conference at Mass General Hospital where a number of people who were injured were taken in the aftermath of all this, and we're told 19 people total were taken to Mass General Hospital. Obviously, we got a lot of hospitals in that area, so we're not clear where all the injured have been taken, but at least some of them, 19 of them, were taken to Mass General. Of those 19, 6 are in critical condition, 5 in serious condition, and the spokesperson over there at Mass General telling us that they're dealing with a lot of amputations. So this sort of backs up what we had heard earlier from witnesses on the scene, including our own Matt Tomlin, a photographer who was right there at the finish line and describing just seeing people without legs and arms in the minutes after these explosions. So again, Mass General Hospital now telling us at a press conference that they're treating 19 people total. 6 of them are in critical condition, 5 of them in serious condition. And again, backing up what we had heard earlier about these really traumatic injuries, we're dealing with amputations here in this case, and that's what the doctors are in fact telling us over at Mass General. So that's what we got here from Mass General. Of course, a lot of hospitals right downtown, and I'm sure the injured are being sent to different ones, but at this point, this is what we're hearing from Mass General.
Well, and Mike, you have to think about it. Once these runners have run 26 miles, they're already so weak. I mean, I ran this years ago, and I just remember my legs felt like sticks. So all these people who are coming through, they are so weak, they are so tired, and you can imagine the force of an explosion like that. It's like you hear these numbers of people dealing with amputations, and it's not surprising. You're here.
We'll be flying combat aircraft over Boston to make sure that the airspace is clear. The NYPD in New York, as it always does during a terrorist attack anywhere in the world, has stepped up its security in the nation's largest city, and that is ongoing now. There is no indication that any other attack is imminent, if indeed this was an attack. We don't have any indication of that whatsoever at this point, but security is going up in various places all around the country. The explosions happened about 2 o'clock, a little after 2 o'clock Eastern Time, 2:10, at the finish line of the Boston.
A Boston fire unit going by. This is, I believe, tape from earlier. We heard something else start to happen as part of our live coverage on WHDH. In big cities where terrible things have happened, you start to have the cell service go down because the bandwidth is finite. So that will happen and has been happening to some of the live reports out of Boston. I want to bring in an expert we've had of counsel on our staff for a good long time, Michael Leiter, counterterrorism, cybersecurity, national security analyst for us. He served as the director of the National Counterterrorism Center from 08 to July.
This is so preliminary, but from what we're hearing, and there are reports coming in that other people around the city have been phoning in with reports of something that may be suspicious. We've heard reports that something may have been seen in other hotels. We do not know and cannot confirm that. But give us a sense how complicated this is for law enforcement right now to decide what to investigate and not.
Well, the idea is you have to investigate them all, unfortunately. That's the reality that abandoned packages, as I've indicated, along the road in the immediate vicinity, people fleeing, bags are dropped, etc. So those are now the subject of report. Heightened sense of awareness on the part of the public. Guaranteed you'll be getting calls on the subway system, public transportation in Boston. Boston has a relatively small bomb unit. state police would be certainly called in. They'll certainly be reaching out to the ATF, because every one of these things is going to have to be looked at. And apart from dealing with the explosion area itself, with the many injuries, the investigation, you have the compounding factor, certainly, of dealing with these unidentified packages. So
well, that's what
it's going to take a while to sort it out.
That's what I wanted to ask.